All right, let's get this review started. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. I tried to watch this Idaho thing yesterday and it was not loading up on Paramount after the live time for it to have shown up on cable, and I was watching TV with my kids when it aired live. I waited until around 1 o'clock in the morning, my time, for it to pop up on Paramount, and so right now it is 9:20 in the morning, and I'm going to be watching it, and as I'm hearing things, I'm going to pause and hit record and give my thoughts in chronological order, in real time of me watching it, so that you guys know in what order from start to finish this stuff is being talked about, if I feel like it's talk about worthy. All right, let's get started. So here we have this morning reference again. They're talking to Xana's sister Jasmine and her father. Now in the other episode, we had friends of, I believe, Kaylee, claiming that she was trying to call Kaylee in the morning because she had heard something was going on, so she was trying to get a hold of her and she wasn't answering. And now we have in here, in this one, the one that came out yesterday, friends of Xana's calling Jasmine in the morning. Now, this 911 call was at 11:58 a.m., okay, but that is noon. There shouldn't have been any calls going out to anyone in the morning, unless it all happened in between them calling over, them being Dylan and Bethany, because that's what we're being told here, them calling over Hunter Johnson to open Xana's door, and the cops getting there. It's the morning word that's going to be causing issues here again, because no one's giving us timestamps. No one's giving us screenshots with timestamps. No one's giving us calling logs with timestamps, text messages with timestamps. We're just being told morning. But it wasn't morning. Unless it was. But how could it have been? So Jasmine gets up after she gets these phone calls, and she drives over to Xana's house while calling Xana, while trying to call Ethan repeatedly, and of course getting no answer. And then she calls her father. Now, Jasmine and Xana's dad was just in Pullman for Parents Weekend, infamous Parents Weekend, and had just left to head home when he got the call from his daughter and had to turn around because something happened to Xana. Now, I know people are probably going to make comments about, why were you so close to Xana but you didn't go see her? Kids are allowed to have things with their parents that doesn't involve all siblings. So while I know that Moscow and Pullman are close together, and he could have, I've seen comments about this already, especially because of the whole lock being changed thing that we heard about in the very, very, very beginning of this case. Literally the very beginning. But I'm pretty sure that already weighs down on him, that he was close, didn't see her because he was spending time with Jasmine, and then this happened. But you're allowed to have specialized things with just one child without involving all the children, just because of how close they are. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to have that special time with your kids. I know how that would be affecting me. Like, I could see his face whenever he's asked by Van Zant, what was your reaction to that? And he's like, my heart just dropped. Yeah, I guess so. And I know that probably plays in his head. I could have seen her. I didn't. I was that close. I didn't go see her. You're allowed to have specialized time with just one child and not feel guilty about it regardless. I'm just going to leave that there. And here we're hearing that the family was contacted at 4 p.m., which I'm sure we've already heard that because we know that it was later on in the afternoon. But that 4 p.m. time just struck me in the brain because that's also the exact same time in the PCA that the homicide detectives and I believe ISP were just getting started at the scene. At least, the Consalvases are local enough to where it shouldn't have been, hours and hours afterwards. But that's also, that's the exact same time that homicide was just getting to the scene and ISP was just beginning to start the process of going through the house. So there wasn't like a number that was called for this rideshare service that ended up taking the girls home from the grub truck. Kaylee texted this person. And whenever Olivia got a hold of this person, the rideshare driver is the one who told the family that there was cameras on the grub truck. Okay. Kaylee made a call to her boyfriend at 2:56 a.m. I'm sorry. You mean 10 phone calls to an ex-boyfriend? What is this? Why did they not feel the need to put in the fact that it was 10 phone calls made from both girls' phones? It was literally like, from what I can remember, Kaylee, Maddie, Kaylee. One phone call. Yeah, they're showing the ooze coming out of the house. Now, I have been on the fence about this, but then I did have another comment that made more sense. I do know something about structure of housing, the way you build things. A little, not a lot. So whenever I was looking at where this stuff is oozing out of the house, I'm also looking at the fact that there's just a real big rusty pipe running right across from it. And so I've always been on the fence about whether it actually was blood or if it was rust water stain. But people are right. If you go back, it's not there in body cam. It's not there in other photographs. It's not there previously. And yeah, knowing that, so much time went on in between. And this is, an older house that had recently been disturbed because it was restructured, remodeled. Yeah. I'm no longer on the fence. It is what it is. Okay, we just got to the part where they're mentioning the bed situation. The way that they're speaking, it is more assumption based off of what they were told and having the autopsy report. They have the full autopsy report. They have COD. They have contributions to death. They have all of it. This full detailed autopsy report is where the family is coming out with Kaylee's wounds were more aggressive. There's evidence that she fought back. Okay. Evidence of her wounds being more aggressive and evidence that she fought back does not also indicate they were asleep in the same bed and Maddie was attacked on the outside and then Kaylee was awakened from the attack while in the inside and trapped. Because another commenter made a point, couldn't you just get off from like the foot of the bed? Couldn't you have just sat up and jumped up and gotten off the foot of the bed? Yeah. In a normal awakened state. So if she would have been asleep, if they would have been asleep in the same bed, the person would have had to have been literally doing what they were doing to Maddie while also trying to like stop Kaylee from getting out the bed at the exact same time. I mean, maybe for one person doing that to two women who are halfway awake is a possibility, but I still don't see that being a quiet situation. But then again, I guess it also just depends on where the wounds were initially made. But I still don't see that being a quiet situation. I just don't. That's just me. But again, I will say again, at this point, this is just assumption of the parents of the two girls being asleep in the same bed. based off what they were told from the coroner before the gag order. But the coroner has lied, said that they were all asleep, called and told the Gonsalves' minor child all these gruesome and horrible details on the phone that she should have never said. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that in my mind, 100,000, 10,000%, whatever the hell number you want to give me, that is infinity and beyond. The Gonsalves are making up things in their brain that make sense based off of what they've been told. And in honesty, if you were them, would you rather want to think that Kaylee was alone in her room with Murphy, heard something, and came down to Maddie's room to see what was going on and walked in on it? Or that they actually spent their last few hours, like, together, in the same bed, together? I mean, the end result of both of these are both horrible. But which one in your mind would you rather keep as one of the parents? But then again, forensic evidence is going to have to come out. And I know some people in the comments in my video yesterday were acting as if this wasn't a big deal, but it is a big deal. Because one person being attacked at a time and somebody walking in and interrupting that attack is a completely different scenario situation all the way around for the entire house and everyone alive in it at the time than the person walking in and seeing two females in the same bed and still going on with their full-blown attack. There is a difference. A big one. Now, they're mentioning the fact that his phone was apparently in that neighborhood like a dozen times prior to this incident. And they're taking that as him, like, scouting out the area, you know? Why would a criminology student who wanted to hand over his services for cloud-based forensics keep his cell phone on while he's scouting out his target? Make it make sense. So it seems like they're pretty much on the same page that I am in this situation. And this has nothing to do with the suspect, but the situation itself. I have always believed that this was, if it was planned, it was supposed to be an attack on one person, and everyone else ended up being coincidental happenstance collateral damage, basically. Because there's nothing to me, with any proof anyway, that connects all four of these kids in any sort of way to something that could have been a target to all of them. Regardless of what people try to say, regardless of what people try to bring into this situation, there's no proof of anything that puts all four of these kids together in a situation where they would all need to lose their lives because of the exact same reason. There just isn't. So I have always thought that it was like a one-person target and everything just went wrong. Even before Brian's arrest. I'm pretty positive this was something that I said weeks before they arrested him. Because it just didn't make sense. And it seems like the families and, you know, some of the other people in this documentary are on the same page with that. And honestly, wouldn't that make more sense? Especially if Brian is the guy, wouldn't it make more sense that there was just one target and everything else went completely wrong? Because, yeah, it does. It makes a lot more sense. Okay, so with the DoorDash, I am now under the assumption that it was handed to Xana. Because if you go and look at the verbiage in the PCA, it states Xana received a DoorDash around 4 a.m. In this documentary, the narrator then states she went back up to her floor, on the second floor, back to her room. And if you go with the verbiage in the PCA claiming Xana received the order, it doesn't say a DoorDash order was dropped off. Saying Xana received the order if you think about it in the way that the police try to word things, it almost does make it seem as if somebody Xana would have opened the door. The person handed it to Xana, hence Xana receiving said order. Because as far as we can tell, there's no food outside the house. There was no DoorDash bags outside the house. We've only seen a Jack-in-the-Box bag next to a crusty, rusty, nasty Starbucks cup in the kitchen that could have been weeks old. You know, these are college kids. So we still, to this day, have no clarification, verification, anything on what was actually delivered that night. But Xana received, it does make it sound as if she would have had to have been the one to open the door and take in the bag. But that just makes it even more confusing that this guy would think, or anyone would think, you know, it's go time. Someone's awake and eating food. Now's the time to go in and do this. Even if they were trying to use the DoorDash as some sort of distraction, the only way that that would work is if they knew that it was coming in. They knew the timing that it was going to show up. I mean, I understand why so many people in the beginning thought that Brian Kohberger could have possibly been the DoorDash driver. Because again, it's just one of those things that just don't make sense. Is it coincidence? Because I mean, it's not like the DoorDash driver being there at around the same time helped solve this any faster. Or made this make any more sense at all. If anything, it just made it more confusing. So the Brianna Fox chick on here says that it's a possibility that if Xana did go and actually receive the DoorDash at the door, that when she turned around and came back upstairs, that she could have come face to face with this person, with the assailant. And then they mention again how Dylan claims to hear a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." I'm almost wondering if that was Ethan talking to Xana. Because what if she did go down and get the DoorDash and came back up and ran into the person? And he did something to her. Or maybe not. Maybe she ran into the room and told Ethan what was going on, and it was Ethan that said, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." To like get away from the person. Or it's a possibility she was already injured. And those words still came from Ethan. I don't see someone who's there to end lives then saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." There's no logic there, but there's no logic in any of this, is there? Now, this is a topic that I was talking with Crime Sleuthin about on Twitter yesterday. So Olivia just stated, Kaylee's older sister, Olivia, that when the arrest happened, that she knew she was only going to have a few minutes before things get wonky to look up any information, and mentions how she saw Brian Kohberger's Reddit posts. Now, from what I'm understanding, later on in this documentary, because I'm only about halfway through, they're going to show an Instagram profile. What me and Crime Sleuthin were talking about is the fact that Steve Gonsalves had came out in an interview. I don't know where this interview is, but I know a lot of you, and drop it in the comments if you remember this, a lot of you are going to remember this. Steve Gonsalves claims that they were contacted prior to Brian Kohberger's arrest and told that this arrest was about to go down, and they were given a name. They're then claiming that's whenever they looked up Brian Kohberger's stuff on the internet, and that's whenever they saw the Instagram profiles of him following the girls, all these things, okay? For one, that's illegal. It is illegal from everything that I'm understanding and hearing for the family to have been told ahead of time the name of the person being arrested. After the arrest, tell them away. Prior to the arrest, No, sir. That's how I'm understanding it. But if they were actually told ahead of time, then why would Olivia now be stating, I only have a few minutes before things go wonky, meaning I only have a few minutes before the world gets a hold of this guy's name and a gajillion different fake profiles are created and it messes up everything that we're trying to look at? Well, if you were told the day before or hours before, it wouldn't be a few minutes. You'd have a lot of time. You'd almost have like 24 hours before anything got released to the public. So those are kind of conflicting statements, but that's also not unusual here. I find it interesting that when it comes to the information for the car, 48 Hours decided to play the clip of Chief Fry claiming that they were looking for the 2011 through 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. Why would they play that clip knowing that now we know that Bryan Kohberger's car was a 2015? Okay, so they're talking about his cell phone turning off on certain times, coming back on, and then the fact that the phone shows that he returned back to that area at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, the biggest reason I have issues with all of this surveillance stuff and the difference in the year of the car and the cell phones and all this, they originally told us that there was like 20,000 of those vehicles in that area. And none of the information when it comes to the surveillance that they have of this car, in any of it do they claim that they can see who's driving, that they can see a parking sticker or any sort of insignia for WSU, which he would definitely have had on his car, or that they are able to read a license plate. So I've always questioned how do they know that they were tracking the right car the entire time? Because the way that Bryan Kohberger's cell phone pings and the way that his alibi is, I was just driving around by myself late at night, there is a possibility that he really did leave his apartment to go on a drive. His phone died and he just went on driving and he drove around in that countryish part, south of Pullman and Moscow. And that the car that they are seeing in that neighborhood in Indian Hills and all around that area might not even be the same car. That is a really big possibility because there are very specific things that we're not seeing that they have when it comes to what they're telling us with this being him and his car concretely. That's just some of the problems that I've had with it. Now, Howard Bloom is mentioning Michael Kohberger coming up and driving back to Pennsylvania with Bryan. And what we were told, and you guys, again, if you guys remember this, comment it that you remember. We were told that whole trip was planned. Like, we were told by an attorney from Pennsylvania that Bryan's dad flying in, getting the rental car, driving to Pullman, and then driving with Bryan and Bryan's car back to Pennsylvania was a way planned ahead of time situation. But what they're telling us in this, what Howard Bloom, who's done his own investigation into this, is telling us is that Bryan contacted his father and was telling him about all the issues that he was having with his job, and he was concerned for his job. And so his dad decided to come up and drive back to Pennsylvania with him. But in this, it doesn't claim that he had lost his job, that his dad came up to help him move back. We know that all of these electronics and things were left in Bryan's apartment. And when it comes to his whole job situation, okay, so we don't have any actual concrete proof of a lot of anything when it comes to his job. What I will say is that what we are being told is that he was undergoing some sort of disciplinary action for his harshness in grading and the way that he did things. And from also what I'm understanding, the professor that he was having issues with this subject was a male. It was not a female. And it's crazy to me that all of his female professors, or at least the ones that have come forward, minus the one that we still need to talk about. We still need to talk about the situation that happened back in his teenagehood with this lady that's coming out and claiming that there was an entire incident and a bunch of girls had issues with him, and there was like an investigation and he got kicked out of this school. We're still going to talk about that. But into his adulthood, his female professors doted on him. And so right around the time, you know, these crimes and stuff was happening, he was having issues with this male professor. He was getting reprimanded for the way that he was grading people, his harshness in class, from what we're understanding, and his issues with this professor personally, from what I'm understanding. And again, there's not a lot of proof of any of this, really. This is just kind of what we're being told. And it matters because it would also contribute to behavioral changes at the same time of the crimes, because all of this stuff going on at the school was happening at the same time. Now, some people would claim, you know, that's an anger motive that just got him more aggravated and pushed him. Okay, possibly. But it also attests to the fact that after the crimes, he wasn't grading so harshly on people. His attitude in class had changed. But he was also being told that all those things had to change because he was doing a bad job as a TA, basically, with the way that he was doing things. So which one was it? Was it a behavioral change because he just committed a crime? Or was it a behavioral change because he was told he had to change things or lose his position? If we had some more actual validity on that subject, then maybe we could make an actual decision on it. But they're keeping all of the stuff when it comes to him in that school completely quiet, with no actual real proof of anything coming forward. So I don't know. I feel really bad for Kaylee's parents in this situation. They're being asked, like, how confident are you guys that Brian Kohberger's the guy? Christy seems to want to believe 1,000 million % that he is. And I can't blame her for that. I can't blame her for wanting to believe that the right person is in custody. But I do appreciate the fact that Steve is like, I don't put anything past anybody. I don't trust anything. I want to see it all 100% myself. I need to see everything. And I'm still open to the fact that somebody else could be involved here. That's a very interesting stance and a very interesting thing to openly state. It really makes you wonder what else he knows that he just can't say. Because, I mean, I know that we've basically come to the assumption at this point that law enforcement really isn't telling the family much of anything, but that doesn't mean that Steve isn't doing his own thing. They've already admitted that they are doing their own thing, and there's been a whole drama series just on the possibilities of the kind of stuff that Steve could possibly be doing on the outside, involving outside sources, internet sources, things like that. We're not going to go through any of those things in this video. I have so many on all of that. I'm glad all that dwindled down because that was just getting so stupid. But for him to just come out and openly be like, yeah, I don't trust any of it, and I'm still very much open 100% to the possibility that somebody else could have done this. It's just a very interesting statement. A kill kit. Well, whoever did this, yes, possibly. It would make more sense if this was a planned out situation for there to be additional things that this person would have brought with them, considering that there was no trail outside of the house that the canines could pick up. And I know that there's, you know, people all over that place all the time, but these are blood sniffing canines and they found nothing. There's no trail in between the crime scenes, in between the third and the second floor, from what we're understanding. It's all contained to the bedrooms. So to have a change of clothes, to have something with you, that makes total sense. But we also go back to the fact that nothing of the victims was found on his person. I mean, after so long, it wouldn't have been. But not in his car, nothing in his apartment, nothing in his office. You've got 6 people in that house living there. There's a dog living there. Not a single hair from a human or a dog happened to just attach itself anywhere from inside that house. Even if you are being super careful, how? How does not one little bitty thing not transfer and carry off somewhere. That's just so insane. So Howard Bloom seems to be on the drug train, at least a little bit, because he's talking about it in this documentary, that this could have been some sort of non-payment situation for something. And this was the effect of something not getting paid for. That's insane, because that's literally one of the biggest things that was going around. There was a rumor, okay? Rumor warning, rumor warning. There was a rumor with no substantive whatsoever, nothing, no proof of anything, okay? But forever this rumor ran around that Maddie had apparently flushed a bunch of stuff down the toilet that cost crap tons of money, and that was the reason for all of this. And that was connected to the whole "what did you tell Adam" situation. There's no proof of this. I know a lot of people are questioning that, and proof could come out. It very well could in trial. Lots of things that we might think are extremely far-fetched right now might come out as truth. We don't know. And it'll be a while until we find out. I know that they did search quite a few banks. And from what I'm recalling, nothing that they released in lieu of these financial companies had anything to do with Brian. Except for maybe Google, because Google Pay is attached to that. But when it comes to banks themselves, I don't recall any search warrants for banks, for financials, for Brian Kohberger. It's all for the victims and the 2 survivors, and like a few other names that are completely redacted for the most part. So it's interesting that Howard Bloom is entertaining that theory, because that's going to have a whole lot more people entertaining that theory. I know there's a lot of people that are adamant that that could be part of this. Okay, so this is apparently the Instagram profile that the family is sharing with 48 hours that they're claiming they found within minutes of having his name. Now, remember what I said earlier, because we just don't know exactly when they actually had his name, because we've heard before the arrest and now within a few minutes of his arrest. So we don't know. But this is the profile that they're claiming they found, that they believe is completely real. My problem with this is that I went in to look for the interview that me and Crime Sleuthin were talking about on Twitter yesterday, and found an article from May the 12th of this year. And this is from ABC News. And right here it says, the Consalvases, a close-knit family with 5 kids, said they haven't been able to establish any connection between their daughter and Kohberger. This has gone back and forth so many times. And if you notice, there's no screenshot with a time that they took the screenshot to prove the date that they had it, to prove if this could have been a fake account after the fact. This amount of followers doesn't mean crap to me. These profiles were created in mass within seconds of his name being released. So you can't say this and then say this beforehand and go back and forth with no proof. You've got to show us timestamps. You have to show us proof of whenever you found this. And also, another thing, just because it's a profile of his, if it was his profile, they would have to actually go in and find out the date that he started following the girls, if it is a legitimate profile, because he was a local, quote unquote, local to that area, who was a criminology student and who might have followed the girls after the crime. Because that's a possibility too. But I don't see how they can go, no connection whatsoever, to, oh, here's his profile and everything that we found to prove. You just can't do this. While editing, I realized I also should have mentioned something that I've already mentioned and probably will mention again later on in this video. Why would a criminology student who wanted to offer his services in cloud-based forensics use his own profile to stalk his targets? That just doesn't make any sense either. Now, people can say, okay, smart, book smart doesn't mean common sense smart. And yeah, I know that. Trust me, I know that. But that could really only be an excuse that's used for maybe forgetting to turn off his phone before he left his apartment. Or maybe for if this was him stupidly leaving the knife sheath behind. But to leave your cell phone on so that it can track that you're in the location of your apparent alleged targets, and then to also stalk them from your very own social media profile, knowing your expertise in cloud-based forensics has taught you better than that, and you continue that exact same mistake for months on end, I'm sorry, but there's no way in hell that that makes any sense to me. And it shouldn't make sense to anyone else either. Well, that ending was pretty rough. I can't even imagine. There's a lot of things about this stuff that we kind of forget. And I think that maybe I skip over these things because I don't have these types of relationships with people purposely. But there's so many milestones in life that not only these victims don't get to experience, but that their families don't get to share with them either. We have Theodora Maddie K, who's now going to be raised without knowing Aunt Kaylee and Aunt Maddie. We have Ethan, who's a triplet, who had a bond with his siblings like something nobody could understand. And now these two siblings that are left are basically going to go through life feeling incomplete because a third of them is missing. And then Xana's sister, Jasmine, she said she would have been my bridesmaid and I would have probably been hers too. And now I have to do all of these things alone. I guess it's those kind of things that I just don't want to think about because that makes it harder to talk about. But it's true. And I want to hope that they have the right guy for these families' sakes. Because for them to have to go through all of this and then it not be right and them have to wonder and go through all of this again would be horrible. But I also don't want the wrong guy put away just because they need a conviction and they don't really care as long as someone gets put there. But yeah, I guess that's it. Let me know if you guys watched it. Let me know what you guys thought about it. But that is it. See y'all.